So this is our ambitious agenda. We have 1 hour to condense some tight information in. And so we're doing some welcome and introductions now. I will quickly do a review of why we chose housing insecurity as one of the first topics in 2022 to address and talk about within My Best. Then we'll go into housing counseling services, followed by homeless services. And then we have three main takeaways that we would like for you all to move into your day, your week, and the semester ahead of you of how you can utilize the information that's going to be shared today. So this is just a quick recap. In fall of 2020, right after the height of the pandemic, or sort of kind of right in the middle of it, we, My Best and MCSS partnered with the Student Financial Wellness Survey with Trellis Research. And from that survey, we received lots of information about the economic insecurity that our students are experiencing and facing. But we decided to focus in on housing insecurity specifically because the data just kind of screams out at you when you take a look at it. Almost half of respondents who participated in the Trellis survey, and again, we had over 10,000 students, Michigan Community College students, respond to the survey. Almost half of those students showed signs of being housing insecure within the 12 months prior to the fall 2020 survey, which lets us know that housing insecurity was a need prior to the pandemic. But many of us know that the pandemic really just highlighted and further scaled the need for basic need and housing insecurity. So we also saw that 15% of respondents indicated being homeless since starting college or within the 12 months prior to the survey. And then respondents with housing insecurity also responded at higher rates, that they worry about having enough money to pay for school. And so what we don't want is for housing to be the barrier that prevents a student from being able to persist from term to term, or being able to transition to further their education at a four-year institution. Sue and Diana have some amazing resources to share with us so that housing insecurity is less of a barrier for students, and will hopefully be able to free up some of their finances to be able to do things like pay for books and pay for transportation to get to school and things of that nature. And so I'm really looking forward to our conversation this morning. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Sue to the stage. She's going to be sharing first with Habitat for Humanity of Michigan. Sue, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and allow you to take the reins.
Okay, thank you, Precious. This is so great to be here, and I just want to make sure that I pull up the correct screen. So bear with me as I transition and start my slideshow from the beginning. And I think I didn't hit the button right. Hold on. I'm usually better at this. Okay, so this is slide. Nope, I want slide 2. Okay. Share, and then from the beginning, and I believe you can see my slideshow. It's very, very short, but there's a good reason for that, because I am confident that you have more questions that we can be very intentional about addressing. When it comes to housing insecurity, Precious gave us some good data. It's unbelievable how many people are going through this today, with a state that has like 48% of the folks in Michigan are housing compromised at one level or another. It could be just that they're housing burdened, that their rent is so expensive that they can't really afford to do anything else but pay rent and maybe eat, a little bit. So we have to make sure that we know all of the resources that are there as housing counselors, so that we can make sure that people can focus on the things that they want to do in their life. And those goals are so important. So I'm very happy to be here. Again, as Precious mentioned, I'm with Habitat for Humanity of Michigan. We are the state support organization for 50 habitats across the state. And we are serving in the MSHDA Housing Counseling Network in a statewide capacity. So we want to be in every single county where we're needed, but we are joined by a group of 35 counseling agencies around the state that will be happy to serve the needs of the students in your areas. So we're very, very good, very responsive when it comes to addressing things like a financial crisis, a housing crisis, and we're also gearing up to be very responsive with disasters. So for any of those kinds of situations that you are experiencing with the students that you're working with, we want to be here for you. As you can see by this map, we are heavily covered down in the lower part of the state, the lower peninsula, especially in the Detroit area. It looks like a lot of housing counseling agencies. We may be small in number, but we're large in impact, and many of us serve statewide. So even though it looks like there isn't much coverage up in the Upper Peninsula, we can still be helpful for those of you that are working with students up there as well. So don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll show you how to do that in just a few minutes. Again, even though we're called a housing counseling network, we are very, very good at addressing all different kinds of financial situations, very, very good at providing referrals and meeting the needs of the families where they're at today. And we're led by MISTA, the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, and they are incredible in ensuring that we have the information we need to make our relationships with the customers that we're privileged to serve have everything that they need. So we're HUD certified agencies, and across the state, we take trainings that MISTA makes sure that we have access to on a regular basis. Trainings in financial planning and helping people to develop and access their goals. We're being trained up in disaster planning as well as disaster recovery. So as we gear up for 2022 and whatever kind of disaster that brings for us, we want to be able to respond to those needs as well. So this is just a few of the logos that I was able to find for our network, but these agencies do represent a total of 35 that are reaching people in every single county in the state of Michigan. The way that we work is to provide individual counseling, and if our agency didn't do that specifically, we would be required as a HUD certified agency to get the folks over to another agency that does this kind of work. The way we provide individual counseling is to do an intake with the family where we get all of their information that we will need in order to help them pursue their goals. We always develop a budget, and we will check that budget in subsequent meetings. We'll do a financial analysis to help the folks know whether they're able to meet their financial goals with the revenue, the income that they have coming into the house. And if not, we're going to do some planning for them to reduce expenses or increase income. We're going to do this in ways that we've been blessed to have a great network and share resources well. So it's incumbent upon us to know what kind of resources there are in the different areas where we're serving and get folks connected to those. It could be a food bank, it could be a place to go get clothing, furniture, it could be help to get them access to housing subsidies, down payment assistance, whatever the needs are. It's really important that we focus on that individual situation and get them referred to the places that they need to go. We also provide follow-up, and HUD says that we have to do that in a way that ensures that we're not missing the boat on anything. So 30, 60, 90 days, we're going to keep trying to get them to come back in and access the services again. But I think for the most of us, we really know that sometimes it's just not the right time for people, and we have to let them go and come back to us when they're ready to continue on. So individual counseling is one way to get that done. We also do group education, and specifically group financial education for most of our constituency. Most of the Housing Counseling Network includes 8 different topics on money management, credit scores, reducing debt and saving, paying off those student loans, or limiting the number of student loans that they even get in the first place. Because time after time, we're seeing people run into all kinds of trouble with their student loan debt when it's all said and done. We do fair housing, fair lending kinds of information, banking basics, consumer protection, and then that long-term planning and insurance, because before they know it, they're going to be our age, my age, and be facing retirement and maybe not ready for that. So all of those topics we feel are so important for helping a person proceed to where they want to be financially. We also provide other kinds of group education, and it's very individualized. So different places will do maybe foreclosure prevention workshops or home buyer education workshops. We're going to want to make sure that they get what they need so that we can provide a certificate of completion and help them access the down payment assistance that's available all throughout the state. Different areas have different amounts of down payment assistance, and we have to know what those kinds of DPA resources are in the different communities so that people can get to where they want to be. Sometimes home ownership costs less than renting, and that's more and more obvious as we continue in this environment right now, that when rents are just sky high, we may want to talk with folks about opportunities for owning a home and how that might really help their budget in the long term. Rental housing counseling is an opportunity for us to engage at the landlord-tenant level. We can help negotiate different kinds of things that could be barriers to successful housing. And really, really important for us is the face of homelessness has changed significantly over the years. And it's not just the single guy with his grocery cart and garbage bags. It can be families living in vans, living in tents, living in campgrounds, living in buildings that are not meant for human habitation. So we want to get connected with those folks and get them on the path to safe and successful housing. Once they are in their housing, we want to make sure that they stay there. So whatever it has to do with preserving that housing, making sure that it's comfortable, that we can ensure that people aren't getting sick in their housing. We as housing counselors know the resources that are in the community. We want to get them connected as soon as possible to opportunities to avoid eviction, to avoid foreclosure. When there's mold, when there's lead, when all of those kinds of yucky things that are out there are impacting a family's ability to live in a healthy and safe environment, we want to make sure that we're a resource for them in that respect. How to engage? Simply go to michigan.gov/housing education locator. This is a live little link here on this. So when you get this slide, you can just click on there, go into that section of MSHA's website and type in the county where you want to help somebody. And it's going to pop up where all of the counseling agencies that are in that location can be helpful. There are agencies like ours. Habitat Michigan is a statewide agency. And so if the opportunities that are on there aren't working out, if a person isn't able to connect well to those agencies that are listed, maybe the waiting list is too long or whatever, they can go to places like Habitat, like the MSU Extension. They're all throughout the state of Michigan, like the community action agencies. I think they're in just about every county as well. Or if they're not there and present, they can get connected with the proper place. We also appreciate the referrals that you sent to us, because our mission is to serve, and we want to make sure that people are well served. So please, to engage with us, get folks over to that website, or pick up the phone and give us a call. Let us know about the person that you're sending our way, so we can be prepared to serve in the best way possible. And we're also always looking for partnerships. So if your college wants to engage with a local housing counseling agency, I'm sure they would welcome that. I know we at Habitat Michigan certainly appreciate any kind of partnership where we can be helpful in facilitating classes. I mean, just think about how it could be to have a class that is for considering student loan borrowing, right? So that they don't get themselves in a place where they can't afford to live after they get out of college. And so I know that's always been a dream of mine, to help serve in that capacity as well. And so I thank you for this opportunity to be with you today. Welcome any questions as we have some more time together near the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. That was wonderful. And I really appreciated how you talked about homeless to housed being the goal, and the facelessness of homelessness, and how that has changed, and how you can't tell just from looking at someone what their housing situation might look like. And so it just reminds me that it's important to just talk about it, and conversations with students, whether we know their history or background or not, because you never know these days. I did have a question for you, as some of my colleagues may be thinking of questions. If you have a question, you can go ahead and place that in the chat. Sue, you had mentioned that there's a 30, 60, 90-day follow-up. After that 90 days, is it the student's responsibility to reconnect with you? How does that look after that 90-day period?
So I can't speak for all agencies, but we've all been trained under the same kind of umbrella, that is HUD, responsibilities to service. And so with Habitat Michigan, we don't stop. We have worked with people for 2 years or more in their goal for financial and housing stability. So 30, 60, 90 is if we're not hearing from somebody, right? So but if we're hearing from them, and if they want to meet with us every other week, we're going to do that. Typically, our sessions are monthly check-ins. How you doing? Anything I can do for you? Do you need any resources? How does your budget look? Let's have a look at how you're tracking expenses, or alternately, more frequently. It could be weekly if they're experiencing foreclosure, potential for eviction. If they are super excited, they just got a big tax return and they want to pay off some debt, we could be working with them more frequently. It's a very individualized way to serve people when you're doing housing counseling. It's based on their needs. It's responsive. It's proactive whenever possible, reactive when necessary, and very much in the consumer's in the driver's seat, right? He or she will let us know what they want, and will let us know the frequency of our interactions as well.
Okay, great, thank you. And then I have another question. How long does it take for a student to get connected once they locate their counseling education agency person?
For every agency, we're required to have a work plan. every year. So for Habitat Michigan, our turnaround time is 48 hours or 2 business days for any contact that we receive. We're becoming more and more automated as are our colleagues across the state. And so that automation means that we can even be more responsive, serve more people, so they can come into our CFT, our customer facing technology, sign up, and they will immediately receive a system response that's followed up with a human response within those 2-day timeframes. And then also, I think that there still are people, of course, students don't tend to be the ones who are as intimidated by technology, but for the elderly population, for people in rural communities, we are going to be more proactive with a person, right? So we're going to be there and say, do you need help filling out your forms? We're happy to do that online with you. And so it's very individualized, but I think most of our counseling agencies follow the same kind of goal to be super fast in responding, because housing is no joke, right? When you're scared about what's happening tomorrow, and sometimes people are very slow to face reality. So the eviction is next week, and I'm just now reaching out for help. So we have to be quick.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue. I appreciate everything that you shared. And we are now going to shift gears and turn things over to Diana. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Good morning. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it looks great.
Great. Thank you. Well, I'm here today to talk about housing assessment and resource agencies. And most I will refer to as the HARA, and most people around the state call it the HARA, but I've also heard HARA or HERA, but when you see these initials associated with housing, we are talking about housing assessment and resource agencies. There are designated HARAs for every county in the state of Michigan. And so the state of Michigan is covered with this service. True North is the HARA for Lake, Mason, Newaygo, and Oceana counties. Prior to this webinar, you were sent the HARA listing for the state of Michigan. And I would say hold on to that precious little piece of papers, as that will give you the individualized services for your area and for your county. Also, there's the link on the bottom there, as MISHDA does update the HARA contact list. People sometimes numbers change, emails change. So you can get an up-to-minute contact list on the HARA website or on the MISHDA website. So what is homelessness? And as Sue mentioned, it's people have a picture in their mind when they think of homelessness, but True North is required, as MISHDA, to follow the HUD definition, or the Housing and Urban Development federal definition of homelessness. And that is a person or a family who lacks that fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence. They do not have a place or a roof over their head, or they're living in a shelter, and that is meant to be temporary. And when we picture homelessness, most people picture the urban ideal of homelessness, in a shelter under a overpass or on a park bench. And that looks different for rural homelessness. In rural homelessness, in True North, we often encounter people having very creative tents or campers on the Manistee National Forest, or living in their car. But again, when we put these pictures in our head, we limit really what homelessness is. And that is folks in all situations that do not have that permanent place to call home. So how do we provide that housing stability and security? Well, HUD has given us some models to work with, and the defining model that we work with now is called the Housing First model. And it's an evidence-based practice that has been around for several years that replaced the Housing Ready model. In the Housing Ready model, we were instructed to say, okay, let's get folks the services they need to address what led to their homelessness. If it was substance abuse or financial mismanagement or maybe a mental health issue, let's get them housing ready and then we will find them a home. Well, that has been replaced by Housing First because the evidence shows that wasn't a success model. We weren't meeting the people at their need, and it's hard for folks to address their needs if they do not know where they're going to be spending the night. So what the Housing First model found is that households can be best served from the safety and security of their own home. So let's get them housed first, and then we will help them address their housing stability. What services and resources do they need to remain stably housed? This also prioritizes those funding for those most in need. Now, when this was first introduced, I remember being at a state conference and they said, do we have enough funding to help everyone that walks through our doors for homeless services? And the answer is no. So how do we prioritize those in the most need, and how do we provide resources and case management for everyone that comes through our doors? So Housing First, again, we are to look at acuity and the needs of the folks that are homeless, literally homeless as defined in that HUD definition, as our first priority as a HARA. The other direction for from HUD and through MISTA again is coordinated entry. And that is the charge for each community to create a no wrong door. So it can be obviously many challenges if a person is homeless or facing homelessness, and they can, in the past, call one agency and they said, we don't help with that. You need to call this agency, and could get the runaround. So communities were charged with figuring out within your community how you can best serve the folks and how it can be a no wrong door when they call. So True North, we implemented a phone number that could take calls and texts from the same number for all 4 communities. We have a housing email that works for all 4 communities, and we have a website that people can access services for all 4 communities. And again, each HARA listed as a part of a community that has been charged with coordinated entry. So again, having that list of the HARA in your area is a valuable tool to help folks get into services. So the step 1 is you have folks coming in requesting housing services. Step 2 is diversion, which seems like we're trying to divert folks away from our services, and in a way we are. It's problem solving with the folks. What brought you to this point? Are there ways that we can help you from entering the homeless services area or becoming homeless? Is there a relationship that can be repaired or needs support? Is there mediation that could be involved? Is there an alternative place that you could stay that would be more stable? So again, trying to help them find resources and create stability and housing stability for them. Again, that's a conversation, and a lot of times when they call our number, they're at that point of desperation and may not be able to be diverted from services. So we do an intake, we do a housing assessment on their needs and what programs they would best fit for. We make a housing referral, and in that program, then they're placed on a prioritization list with a case manager that will help them with housing search and placement. I think that's probably one of the frustrating things when people call us. They think that we have housing lined up that they can just move into. They think we have that apartment building, that house, and when we say, you know, our job is to go alongside you to help you in that search and give you the tools that you need, the resources. If we will give them on listings of any openings we may have, but the housing, as you know, is a rare and precious commodity. So we are there to try to help them find that housing. And then ultimately the goal is to help them find a safe and stable home, and then provide them that housing support that will promote the housing security. This is just an example of Newaygo County HARA services, and to give you an overview of one county's services. And again, each county is unique in its resources, and some HARAs are more of that resource where they are sending and referring folks to other agencies that provide the services. Rural communities like Newaygo County, we do a lot of our services and referrals in-house. So generally you have households that come in either through self-referral or a community or service provider. And in a part of that diversion attempt, if someone is under 18 and unaccompanied, we will refer them to a youth runaway or homeless services program. If they're over 18, they come into our HARA and they complete an initial screening, as we talked about. The required documents for most programs are picture ID, income verification, proof of that housing crisis. So we got a eviction notice, or in the rural communities, we go out and we take pictures of people in their campers. We have to provide that proof of housing crisis. Have they gone through MDHHS and got a state emergency relief? And then the release forms. Now, if a person is experiencing a housing crisis and have been moved from place to place, sometimes these important documents have been misplaced. So we do have resources to help people get that picture ID, obtain the birth certificate, those types of things. But most programs, if they're going to enroll, require these documents. Then we determine housing eligibility for programs or their interest in participating in service. Again, if they're not eligible for a program, and we'll talk a little bit more about those eligibility requirements, we can still assist them with the case management, with other housing stabilization services. And down here, again, these are unique to the Newaygo County community, but we're prepared to refer folks to these different types of resources that can help them with their housing crisis and housing stabilization. But if they're eligible for a service or in need of a service, we have basically 3 tiers. We have immediate resources. If someone is sleeping out in their car and it is, 40 below, we're gonna work at getting them into a hotel or motel voucher that can be 7 to 14 days to meet that immediate need of safety. We also have different shelters. The green are the services that True North provides. The blue are other resources that we use, but we work with other shelters. We have temporary and midterm resources, again, through different sources, but these can be from 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, up to a year. And these are considered midterm resources where we provide financial assistance while folks are getting the stabilization services that they need, and hopefully then we'll be able to work towards self-sufficiency when the program is done. Long-term resources, again, these are folks generally with the greatest need, but we have the housing choice voucher, which is better known as Section 8. Other programs, again, the Center for Nonprofit Housing at True North is our housing counseling agency as described by Sue, but just these other resources that will be provided to folks for a year and beyond. Again, each HARA is unique. Each HARA has different grants, and but overall, they are charged with bringing folks in and making sure that they have the resources they need to address their housing crisis. And I'm guessing that most of the folks that you will encounter, most of the students that you will encounter would be considered more in this category, the prevention or at risk. And how we remember it is, or an easy way to remember it is that they have a roof over their head when they come in. So even if it's an unstable roof, it's a roof. And people picture this as homeless, but it does not meet the HUD definition of homelessness. So couch surfing is not considered homeless. Facing eviction is not considered homeless. It is considered in the at-risk or prevention services. And again, I know that's different than the K-12 McKinney-Vento definition. That definition of homeless for McKinney-Vento folks is more the prevention at risk. But for our housing services, homeless services purposes, that is not considered homeless. But we do, I guess the good news is that we do have services to help those folks to prevent eviction. We have services for those that are couch surfing and need to get out because they're going to put the leaseholders status at risk of losing their housing. Whatever reason they need to get out, we do have services or prevention services offered to those folks. And this is where whenever I talk about our services, I call it our patchwork quilt of funding. Each HARA has its own patchwork quilt of funding. Each quilt looks a little different. And sad to say, each quilt has a few holes. It's not a complete blanket at all times. It depends on funding that can change from year to year. It depends on funding that may have run out. And it depends on those program guidelines. But we have on the side of our quilt, the alphabet soup that all professions have, and bunches of letters. But what do they mean? We receive funding through MDHHS and MISTA, and each of those state agencies have a little different requirements and determinations in the grants that we receive. Over here, we have the AMI, or the area median income percentage. Some of our grants you must be below 30% area median income, which is extremely low income. Some grants may be 50%. Our COVID emergency relief funding that we received was up to 80% AMI. So again, each grant has its own AMI requirements. Over here is HQS, our housing quality standards. Again, some grants require those very strict housing quality standards in order to fund the program. On the other side, we have habitability, where a unit just needs to pass, and I don't say just needs, well, needs to pass habitability. They need to know that it's a safe environment without maybe some of those same requirements as HQS, where they measure the railing on stairs and much more particular. Housing status over here in the corner, as we said, some grants only cover people that are literally homeless. There are grants that we have for eviction prevention. There are grants that are for that prevention or at risk. So again, your housing status will determine what type of grant you will fall under. And then there's the fair market rent. That is what is set as what should be the fair market rent for the state, and it changes every year. Some of our grants will only pay 100% and not a penny more of what fair market rent is determined. And some grants must include their utilities. So their rent amount and their utility amount can't go over that fair market rent. Some grants cover 120% or 150% of FMR. So again, the unit must meet what grant you're eligible for. And as I mentioned in our Housing First, our acuity. So we must prioritize those with the highest acuity. Families, health needs, disabilities. We must make sure that our funding, if we have an opening, is going to those with the highest acuity. So again, it's a quilt. We try to cover the best we can. And the best resource that you've gotten out of today, because you're not going to need to remember FMR and acuity and HQS and habitability, is that HARA list that you received with each community covered. And I would encourage you to contact the HARA in your area. If your college covers several different communities, or your students are driving or commuting from different communities, your college may cover several HARA areas, but I would get to know them, get to know what resources are available in each one, and again, use that resource for the students that you need. So that is all I have, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Diana. And we do have a question.
Yes.
It reads, can you walk through the steps of a community referral? For example, if I became aware of a student in this situation, am I able to just send their information to the HARA, which will follow up with the student? Or do I give the student the information and hope that the student connects with the HARA?
We would ask that the student contact the HARA, because all of the information that is needed to move forward would need to be direct information from them. I mean, on occasion, we've had third parties contact us and ask us to reach out, like Community Mental Health, MDHHS, and we will. But again, there's more investment if the person themselves directly calls us.
Okay. So if I'm thinking, if I'm supporting a student and registering them for classes and we just so happen to talk about HARA, would it be appropriate for me as an advisor to call with this, like be in the room, have the student call you guys as like accountability measure? Is that permissible?
That would be permissible. Probably someone would ask, do I have our permission? Do you want to talk with this other person and get a verbal agreement? I can tell you that most of the time with our coordinated entry and you call the 800 number, it's going to tell you, we will call you back within 24 hours. So it would be, you would do that initial message and you would get that call back. I can tell you that we schedule phone initial intakes. So then you could do that phone initial intake with the student if they would like that support.
Okay. If I am working with a student who is facing eviction or anticipating being homeless within a 24-hour, 48-hour time period, what would be the best course of action?
Well, contact the HARD, because again, we're going to contact you back within 24 hours. And hopefully we can work through the resources and see, is there some mediation with the landlord that if they're working with True North, we have quite a few landlords that we work with. And sometimes just knowing that the person is initiated services with True North will allow them to delay the eviction. And again, if it's a HARD, they have to be out, there's no other way that they can get out, we would then look at the shelter option, the motel option, to make sure that they had a safe place to go if they had to get out.
Okay, thank you. Is there a limit to the amount of times a person can work with HARA?
No, there is not. Some grants require you can only access it once within a year's time. Again, the goal would be if you were on a midterm program where you got 3 or 6 or 12 months of rental assistance, by the end you would have the resources that you would be able to be independent afterwards. But sometimes, life happens and people need to come back, and they can come back as many times as they need.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both for all the information that you shared. I was just placing in the chat that all of the information, the resources, the HARA contact sheet, the link for the locator, the housing education locator, I will send all of that in an email to all of you who have registered. I do have a couple of closing remarks that I'd like to share with you all as well before we depart today, as I know all of us have lots of things on our schedules to do. So let me see here. Let me share my screen. Okay. So the three things that you can do after today's webinar is to share this information with your circle. I'm sure some of you may have colleagues who are also interfacing with students frequently, and housing insecurity may be top of mind for them or for their students. So share this webinar with them. The recording will be available and that will be shared out as well. It would also be strategic to create a specific communication strategy to share the HARA resources with students, or just to talk about or create a strategy to make sure that faculty are aware of the housing resources that are available to students and how to locate a counseling educator in their area. And then the next thing that Diana also mentioned is to connect with the HARA in your county. On the MCCA website, the list of events with today's event, there is a contact sheet of all of the HARAs by county that you can access to locate the HARA in your area. So those are the three takeaways from today's webinar. There's also an event that I'd like to welcome you all to. It's more of a campaign or charge or a call in, if you will. MCSS is focused on equity now more than ever. And so a part of our initiative to center equity in all of our work and to highlight how we're doing that, we have what we're calling our Level Up campaign. And we're inviting all of you to join us in this digital dialogue to talk about the connections between self-care and self-awareness and equity. And what does that look like? How can we bring authenticity in our advocacy efforts? And how can we make sure that we're spreading equity everywhere? What does that look like in our work? What does that look like in our personal lives? And how can we make sure that we are edifying equity in all of the things that we're doing? And so this is your call in to join us on both Twitter and LinkedIn. We are active in both areas on social media, and we'd love for you all to join us in those spaces. And as always, if you have any questions, you can contact us. Sue or Diana, do you have a preference on how individuals might be able to connect with you after today's webinar?
I'm very accessible. Phone, email, Sue Ortiz or S. Ortiz at Habitat Michigan. And I'm happy to give that to you, Precious, or I think you already have it. But cell phone too, just please allow me to help connect you with the best agency closest in your area that would be able to be helpful for your housing counseling and education needs.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, I'm the same. Email, phone number, whatever works, feel free to share.
Okay, I will share that with you all once the recording is available and ready to share out. I have 9:53 on my end, 7 minutes back to your morning. Steward the time well and wisely. I appreciate all of you joining us today, and I will see you in the next virtual space. Thank you all.
Thank you.